Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to ThoseTwoGeeks. He's Alex, I'm Joe, and we're back on Saturday. And is it our first of the new year? Honestly, everything's melted together. I don't
I
remember.
I don't think so. 'Cause I think we had we had one last week that was on. It was New
Okay, yeah,
Year,
that would
same
have
old
been.
geeks. Because that was I don't even know what we talked about.
I
Probably
don't.
wrestling.
Yeah, if it was with Matthew, it was with wrestling.
No, so Joe's reading list was with Matthew.
But with Matthew, that's right.
That was 2 weeks ago.
So
I'm
speaking of
actually
that,
look. Yeah, I'm actually looking at the show notes to see what we talked about last week. I don't
yeah, that's
remember.
funny. I don't either, and it was only a week ago. But speaking of the reading list, I'm starting it today. Like I've slowly attempted. And it's not because I'm not interested. It's just like everything's been
It,
happening. Brady's been sick, whatever. But I found myself opening. I never read the table of contents, and
mm,
I never read anything that's like preamble to the actual chapter one. I usually just dive right in. I'm not one of those people who really care what the author thinks. Unfortunately for the authors, I just want to read.
I honestly I get that. I tend to I'll read like the prologue or the whatever the first page of the story is,
Yeah,
and sometimes I'll read the historical note afterwards, depending on the book. There's an author I read, Bernard Cornwell, that after he tells the story, he then says, "So this is what actually happened, and this is what I changed to make the story better."
oh, okay. So it's
Uh,
kind of like a
it,
director's cut.
yeah, exactly. So it'll be like this is what because his a lot of his stories are historical fiction, so they're more based
Yeah,
in history. So it's a case of he will tell the good story, and then he tells you what he changed and why he changed it, and that
right.
I find interesting. But for the most part, I don't tend to read the acknowledgements
No.
unless I really like the author. But same as you, I don't tend to read anything that isn't
Even in like a
story.
trade paperback for a graphic novel, I don't read that stuff. I never do. It just I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I love behind the scenes in wrestling, but like with authors and stuff, I don't really care. And I know I
It
said that on purpose to tiptoe around what we said
I
off
know,
camera.
I know. So, folks, we are well aware that we verge on being a wrestling show half the time that you
Hmm.
listen to us.
Yeah.
And we're also well aware that WWE Raw aired for the first time on Netflix
Yeah, and we had an
this
extensive
week.
conversation in
We
our
did.
chat between
Yeah,
it,
we
but
did.
there's still a lot to unpack, but
There
I
is.
felt
And
it's good with Matthew.
agreed. So we're deliberately not we're going to try to not bring it up any more than we already have
Yep,
because next week Matthew's coming back on for another
correct.
jam session, and then we're going to be able to unpack the Raw that just was, the SmackDown that just came,
The
the next
NXT.
Raw, the
Yeah.
NXT and the SmackDown, and not so much the stories that are going to be there, but more how we felt as
Yeah,
human beings viewing it and how the
exactly.
production values change and all of that kind of stuff. So we may still talk about things here and there as they come in because we're friends. We talk about that shit all the time. And as
Exactly.
I'm sure you can imagine, it creeps in.
Right. I just remembered what we talked about last week. It just dawned on me.
Joker Folie
Joker
do.
2. Yeah,
Yeah,
Joker Folia do.
yeah.
We probably just wanted to block it from our memory. I mean, that movie is it's a very
It,
interesting watch, but
agreed. Yeah,
I don't recommend it. It's not something like I say, "Oh, you need to watch this." If you get the time and you want to do like a weird experimentation on your viewing, go ahead, watch it and see if it floats, but
I,
it's a really
so
mixed bag.
when you were talking about behind the scenes stuff with wrestling, I think I kind of enjoy behind the scenes stuff with wrestling to an extent.
Hmm.
I also enjoy, for the most part, a lot of behind the scenes stuff with movies, TV shows, that kind of thing.
Right.
And yet, for some reason, there are certain things I don't really care about behind the scenes for as much. And I think you're right. Like I enjoy some of the stories behind comics and everything and the history behind it.
Yeah.
In fact, I think comics might be the one I care the most about the behind the
Yeah,
scenes
and
with.
I can understand that, but
Yeah.
like for movies, I don't really care about like the making of the movie. I if I buy a director's cut, it's just usually because I want the biggest and best. I never
Yeah.
watch the director's cut. I mean, I watch the
Y-
director's cut of the film, but I never watch like commentary. I never sit through like a 3-hour movie with commentary going on. It's just not something I do. I tried to do it once with a buddy who was obsessed with Lord of the Rings, and we tried watching it with commentary. He
That is
thoroughly
the
loved it. Oh
that
my
is the
god.
worst movie for you to start with.
Oh, it's brutal. It
Now,
was so
I
brutal.
full disclosure, like I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. Like
Yes.
I have watched all 40 hours of the behind the scenes stuff for
Mhm.
the extended editions. I have done that. And I have watched movies with commentary on like the early X-Men films, but that was also about I haven't done it in 15 years or more
Yeah.
because I had more time back then. Right? Like I find that while I still love movies, I've long ago accepted the fact that I'm just going to watch the movie and enjoy it and then read about some of the behind the scenes stuff
Right.
after the fact. Like you can read in 10 minutes about what they're going to tell you in an hour because they do a
Exactly.
lot of the scene cuts and everything. So I tend to read a lot more of the behind the scenes stuff now than I ever used to. And not
Right.
because I don't want to see it, I'm still interested in learning it. But I'm also not 15 anymore where I get home from
Yeah.
school, put the movie on, oh, now I'm going to watch it with commentary and do the same thing again.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if my attention span has changed. Probably has. I don't
Mine
know if,
definitely has. I've noticed it for sure.
yeah, and I don't know if that's because of TikTok. I don't have TikTok. I refuse to get it because I know what it will be like when I get it, and I will not stop using it.
Right. You'll
But
doom scroll.
exactly. And but even when you're going through YouTube to find, oh, what's this reel? Oh, what's this reel? Well, shit, I was meant to find a video to have on the background so I could do something for half an hour, and now I've just spent the last half an hour looking at
Yeah,
reels. So
easy. Easily.
easy
That
to do.
happens all the time. That's toy reviews for me. Like, I
I believe it.
intend with the best of intentions to sit down and watch something different every day. Like, oh, I'll watch a movie, or I'll watch a documentary, or I'll watch, an episode of something that I want to watch. And the first mistake, I do it every time. I made it last night too. Right before bed, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, oh, my subscriptions. I'm like, what's David displaying model behavior? Like whatever toy reviewer that, and there's at least 100 I follow. And
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, what's that? Okay. And then next thing I
Yeah,
know, I've watched 10 of them. And I'm like, shit, I forgot all
I
about it.
I love watching Nerdzoic.
Hmm,
Don't care so much for the toy reviews because I'm trying. I know I'd be like you if I got into it, I wouldn't get out of it, and
right.
I know that would then encourage me. Oh, I'll buy this and I'll buy that and I'll buy this. So what I enjoy about Nerdzoic is a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that he does, like talking about his toy shop,
Yeah.
his lists and that sort of thing. But it's the a lot of the toy shop and the issues that he has with that I find really interesting. So that's why I tend to watch a lot of him. I love David Display's model behavior.
Oh,
I think
God,
it's
me too.
absolutely fantastic. I just really enjoy his delivery. So it's funny because he doesn't encourage me to buy a lot of stuff. So I
Right.
just like watching him and listening to him in the background. It's like he's like when you wake up in the morning and you're really tired, you put on a cup of coffee or you get a cup of coffee or caffeine,
Hmm.
whatever you get in the morning, and you
Put the
just sit
weather
there
on.
and yeah, like you just sit there and
And he
wake up
even
slowly.
says it in his videos. He's like, "Oh, just be set while I'm, rambling." And you guys,
Yeah,
I watch him to watch him though. I thoroughly intently watch him. I don't have him ever in the background. I pay full attention.
a lot of the stuff I watch is stuff in the background. Like I watch a lot of historical, like Time Team, which is
Right.
an old British archaeology show where they have 3 days to uncover what they can uncover, and that'll be on in the background. Like a lot of things like that that I enjoy. Defunct Land is a guy that talks about bankrupt stuff and how different theme parks and whatever have just gone
Oh, no
bankrupt over the
kidding.
years. Defunct Land and what else? Oh, Bright Sun Films does that too. I have him on a lot. His voice is, to me, again, it's the voice is relaxing,
Right.
and yet the subject matter is really interesting. So a lot of stuff like that I'll listen to. I also enjoy. I don't know if you know the channel Scary Interesting.
No.
It's so he talks a lot about caving disasters, mining disasters, like natural
Oh, okay.
disasters with human element.
Yeah.
And so I listen to that. He also does like horror theme stuff, which you might
Hmm.
dig. I don't tend to
Well,
listen to that as much, but he
yeah.
has thoroughly convinced me never to go cave diving and never to,
Spelunking. Yeah.
yeah, and never to go into a cave that I can, you know, crawl on my hands and knees. And if it gets too
Right.
tight for that, I ain't going any further.
Oh, I'm sure. I wasn't gonna do it to begin with. I've always had that thing where it's like, Yeah, cave isn't for me. As much as I
It's
like Batman, I'm not doing it.
so the interesting. I have gone caving before, and it's an absolutely
Mm,
wonderful experience. I really enjoyed it. However, I was also on a guided tour,
right.
and it was very much a case of, hey, you guys aren't very good at this. Stay with us. I will tell you where to stand, where
Yeah.
to avoid, so you don't fall down a giant hole. And as we're walking down the this pathway, the guy's like, everyone go over to the right. We're like, oh, why? He said, because if you go another 2 feet to your left, you're going to go down that hole. It's at least 50 feet deep.
You're dead. You're dead.
And we're like, what? He said, well, it wasn't straight down. It was on a slant. And he's like,
Right,
it's
right.
50 feet deep. Unless you know what you're doing, you won't be able to stop yourself. It'll be very difficult for you to climb out. It can be done, but it'd be difficult for you to climb out. And we're like, yeah, we don't need to try that.
I
That's
love the
so,
reassurance. It can be done, but you
yeah.
probably
Well,
will die.
he didn't say you die. It would just be like,
Right.
you could get out. We could lift you out if we had to, but it
R-
wouldn't be ideal for you, right?
No, but it depends on how you fall. You trip face forward, you're
Exact.
done.
Well, I think for the majority of his anticipation was as you're walking, you slip and you would just
Right.
go down feet first, which is why you could climb out easier. But
Yeah.
regardless, caving is fantastic if you
Hmm.
A, know what you're doing, B, don't take risks that you're not trained for,
Right.
and C, just don't squeeze yourself into places that you really
Yeah.
shouldn't fit into. Like there's a lot of things I watch on YouTube to remind myself why I don't want to do that shit.
That's pretty
Like
informative and
like
smart.
yeah, I find it really interesting, and the reason I watch it is because I find that stuff fascinating. It's like people that go and look at abandoned buildings and that kind of stuff. I love
Yeah.
the history of that, and I find that stuff really fascinating. But sometimes the more I watch, I'm like, as I'm getting on, like I don't know if I want to do that and risk falling and breaking something, or
Hmm.
getting trespassed or whatever. Like depending on where you are, you might have
Yeah.
someone who's a lot more defensive of their property, and rightly so, because it's their stuff, and I'm not supposed to be there.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff like that that I watch. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm never going to do it, but that's really cool.
Yeah, so, like, I'm that way with paranormal stuff, but it's
Yeah.
so hard with paranormal because I fully believe in the paranormal. I've seen enough in my lifetime, firsthand to know that there is paranormal stuff out there. However, the shit you see, even ghost hunters and taps and everyone that they say is the most authentic of all time, how do you know? They got a production crew, a camera crew, they got editing, and like they got sound effect. Like it just, I never am able. I watch it, but they're like, "Oh my god, I just felt that." Like, how do I know the guy's not just standing there, and be like,
It,
three, two, one. Oh my god, I
the
just felt
ironic
that.
the ironic thing is like talked a bit before about my lack of belief in things.
Hmm.
That kind of show actually encouraged me to not believe in it because it looks so acted and pre-produced. Like I love shows
Right.
about Bigfoot. I don't know
Oh
if
yeah.
like that kind of stuff. Like regardless of whether I think there is or is not a Bigfoot,
I think there
I
is.
I think there's something, or at least there
Yeah,
was something.
there has to be with
Like, and I
everything
think
that comes from
somewhat
everything. Yeah.
recently, like if it isn't a Bigfoot, it's a recent development within the last 30, 40
Yeah.
years. It
Yeah.
stopped being around. But the shows that you watch do nothing to convince me there's Bigfoot. It's just
No,
these are guys laughing about in the woods, pretending there's a Bigfoot, making money off of it.
that's what I'm
That's
saying.
how I view that show, and it's a similar thing for ghost hunters and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I enjoy them and I do watch them, but it's very much a this is here for my entertainment more than anything else. I
Yeah.
don't view
Yeah.
it as like as an educational slash informational thing. It's very much a no different to me than Batman, right? Like I'm watching
Right.
it, it's like a fly in the wall kind of thing, like Batman.
I mean, because I'm a very firm believer in hauntings. It makes sense with just the way existence is. I believe in all that stuff. I also believe you don't tamper with it either. I don't believe in like going and antagonizing something. Like I'm a firm believer of, there's been cases documented. I'm a firm believer of you can accidentally have something attach itself to you. Because I do believe in possession. They've had exorcisms and things like that. And oddly enough, I will never watch a movie with possession. It's so hard.
You
It's the
said that,
worst
yeah,
thing
you
for me to
said that.
yeah,
So we were talking
petrified.
about Exorcist once, and you said, no, I've never watched it,
I've
and I
watched like 5 minutes of it and I can't do it.
yeah,
I
and
just
the ironic thing is that's one of the few horror films I've actually watched.
right.
But again, like I think I don't. know if you can. People do consider it a horror film, and I get that. I think it's not a. It's more of like a thriller suspense horror than it is like a Freddy
Yeah,
Krueger,
it's not a
right?
slasher. That's what those
Exactly.
would
Yeah,
be.
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
But like, so my ex loved exorcisms. So she would her always like when she'd visit, she'd throw on like The Exorcism of Emily Rose or something like that. And I'm like, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like, I can't do this. This is like the one thing I can't do. It's this and giant spiders. Like, please, these are the only two thing parameters I have. Everything else is on the table, but giant spiders. If there's an exorcism with giant spiders involved, I'm completely
Not
screwed.
watching it.
But like,
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's funny that I've never
like
really been worried about spiders, and I think that's purely because so I don't know if you knew this. We have not got any screens in the UK,
okay, on your
so
windows.
Windows at all yet. Nothing at
Okay,
all. Now the flip side of this, we also don't have any mosquitoes that will come in and bite you when you're sleeping, so we can have the windows open. No worry,
how
it's not
does
a big
that
deal.
work?
The, the windows just open. It's
No,
like
no.
this
How do
nice.
you have no mosquitoes?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. We have midges, which aren't mosquitoes, and they're like in forests and stuff,
Yeah,
and whatever, and they're annoying, but they don't
right.
bite. Um,
Okay.
I couldn't have no screen in North America with the
Oh
mosquitoes.
God, no,
I
you
couldn't do
can't.
it. No, I couldn't
No.
do it. But over there, like no screen, it doesn't bother me at all.
Interesting.
And
You guys also aren't big on air conditioning over there, right?
oh, we haven't needed it like for decades. It's
Yeah,
like with when people say, "Oh, you don't need heat in Florida." You do need heat in Florida.
you
It's just
do. Yeah.
very rarely needed, and it's the same
Right.
thing for air conditioning. When I was growing up over there, I didn't need air conditioning at all. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
a thing that was required. Now, 20 years later, it's a thing that people start to need more and more. Like, and
Right.
people will start, well, oh, we can't find a fan or anything. So
Yeah.
yes, the houses are insulated, but it's very much a case of air conditioning now is much more prevalent. Like we
Right.
only got heat pump air conditioners in our place here in Atlantic Canada in the last 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
Before that, we had like portable air conditioning units, but even that, those we got, I think it was 2011, 2012, something like that. So it
Wow.
hasn't been a thing that we've needed for a long time. I mean, I realize I'm saying 15 years isn't a long time, and
No, no, no. I
realistically,
get what you're
it's
saying.
not. But it
Yeah.
wasn't something that my wife ever had prior to then. Like they had fans and stuff, but nothing much more than that. And I
That's
don't
interesting.
remember ever needing even a fan growing up. Like if you're getting too hot, you open the window wide, and then you just deal with the moths that come in.
Oh,
And
us. It's a prerequisite of life to have an
yeah,
AC once it hits a certain month. But the
yep.
other thing is too is it's weird because oh, I was gonna say I lost the only reason I know about the air conditioning tidbit is because I watch a lot of Cultaholic Wrestling,
Hmm.
and MGF was getting interviewed over at Rev Pro, and they were interviewing him in a building, and he's like, "You guys don't really believe in air conditioning over here, do you?" And they're like, "Well, we don't really." They said exactly what you said. We don't really nothing about the mosquitoes, but we just open up a window. He's like, "Open up a window." He's like, "Am I in a third world country? Am I supposed to be breathing the fumes of these humans?" Like it was hilarious. It just kept going on. I know you know you know Cultaholic. It
Yeah, I
was
know.
Jack
Yeah, yeah.
was Jack the Jobber. Oh my God. He just got roasted for like an hour because MJF stayed in character. And I was like, man, that's a tough interview. I love MJF's character, but I think even if I was doing that interview, I'd be snapping back a couple times. Like I wouldn't just be sitting
I
there taking it on the chin. I'd be snapping back big time. I
I
know me.
think that you'd have to go into it knowing that it's a character and
Yeah.
knowing the character wants to get a rise out of you as well.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that said, if I was doing it as a hey, this isn't an interview, how you doing? And he's in character, I'd be like, this is really annoying.
Yeah.
So I understand where the difference is in that. Like if I'm going there for
Right.
an experience and he's in character, fantastic. If I just want to say, hey Max, fuck off, Mark. Well,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah.
If it's in like an airport or whatever, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
somewhere that you're not expecting to see him or whatever,
Right.
I get it. Like I know I've read about people meeting. John Moxley out and about, and then he
Yeah,
said
he's a tough one.
he he is, and I think it's because he's like, even when Renee interviewed him, his wife,
Yeah.
he's very difficult. Like, I think he's just someone that doesn't,
I
he's
think
very
he's just
shy.
intense. He's shy and
Yeah,
intense. It's
he's
strange.
he's very shy, but once you get him to open up, it's great. But
Yeah.
I've read people say, "Oh yeah, I walked by, I waved to him, I said hello, and he said hello back," and that was it. Like, there's clearly, this is all we're gonna do. And whereas the
Dude,
flip
I
side is,
told you with him, I was like, well, it was a big match. He's probably in character, but MJF, it's a shtick. But
mhm,
Moxley was walking around backstage like pacing like a caged animal. Just well, around catering where everyone was just, cavorting and
yeah,
laughing and joking. He was just like stone faced, back, forth. Couldn't sit down. He'd sit down for a second, get up, he'd
yeah,
like shake
yeah,
his head, then run around. And
yeah.
it's like,
I
Jesus.
So one of my friends met Kevin Owens in an
I
airport,
love him. Yeah. How is he?
and so this is what I find really interesting. Like, so my friend said I could tell Kevin Owens was having a really shit moment. Like,
Hmm.
whatever was going on, like whether it was production, flight delays, whatever it
Yeah.
was, the guy was furious and he was just angry and he was on the phone and whatever. And
Hmm.
my friend, he said, I walked past him. I said, "Hey, big fan of your work. Really appreciate what you do. I think everything you do is fantastic."
Hmm.
And he said, Kevin Owens looked at me and he could see the change as he buried the anger. Thanks, I really appreciate that. And then my friend went away and he said, no, but
Wow.
all of a sudden the anger came right. But like, whatever was in that moment, he said, Kevin Owens buried everything that he was feeling, made sure my buddy got at least a positive memory.
That's pretty awesome.
And my friend's like, yeah, I said, I had my hands in my pockets, like there's no phone. I said, I didn't want a
Hmm.
picture or anything.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, hey, I really appreciate what you do. I think you're fantastic. And then just keep going. And I think
Right.
because he saw me in the moment of not really even stopping, he just kept,
Yeah.
he's like, I think that helped him in that moment to have a break from whatever he was doing. But he said, like,
Uh,
I can't say enough good things about him in the all
yeah.
said and
That
done. Like,
wasn't how I thought that was going to end. As soon as you said that he was having a bad, I thought he was going to be like, hey, everything, I love everything you do is fantastic. Who the fuck are you? Like, I thought it was going to be
yeah,
something like that.
no. And I think because it was in an airport,
Yeah.
and like they were doing connecting flights. So I think it must have been flight delays or something.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, it's one of
Could be
those things
personal
where
too. It could have been a bad day. Just who the hell knows?
who knows, and ultimately, it's not our business to know.
No,
And my
and
friend
those are
said,
the
like,
places I firmly believe. I haven't really run into wrestlers outside of events or airports or things like I haven't run into anybody in that
mm,
kind of candid situation. I'm a firm believer if I came across them though, if they saw me, I'd wave and say hey and be like, love your work, whatever.
yeah,
But I'm not this guy who's gonna shove a pop in their face or whatever. You know what I mean?
no, exactly, and I think that's what the difference was. My buddy's the same as you. He said I was just going to my gate. He said I
Yeah,
saw him. I was starstruck. I had to say hello,
of
and that's
course.
all I needed in the moment. He said, like, I
Right.
didn't want anything more than that. I just wanted to wave and say hi, and that's all I needed. And he said he was gracious enough to thank me
Yeah.
and just do it. And he said, and that was a perfect interaction for me. It's all I needed. He
Yeah.
said,
You know
and
what?
even if he'd have been mad and screamed at me, I would
Right.
have accepted it because I invaded his space. He said, so I wouldn't have been mad no matter what happened.
No, exactly, and that's, a real human way to look at it. These people are human beings.
Exactly.
They're not monkeys on strings. Yes, they make an insane amount of money for a lot of them, but that doesn't give you the right to, be like, "Oh, they make so much money, I'm entitled to this." Like, there's a thing I'm glad you mentioned something about, natural disasters and things like that. I want to take the time to talk about the wildfires currently going on in California here. It's
Mm,
absolutely awful. It's happening in LA. There's a lot of mixed sentiment on it. I have some friends close to me that like the one that hit me is I'm a big fan of Billy Crystal.
yeah.
I'm a very big fan of him. He also has a book that I absolutely adore that got turned into a stand-up. It's called 700 Sundays with My Father, and I think it's just one of the best things ever, and it's just so good. But Billy Crystal and his wife lost their home in the fire, and they lived there for over 50 years. And like, there's a sentiment that some people are like, well, they're rich. They can just go buy another home, Tuesday and just move. No big deal. Then there's also, you got to look at it from a human perspective is Yes, ideally, if you and I lost our home, it's going to be a major setback and probably change our life drastically. He probably can just go grab a condo or anything else he wants, whatever. But the thing is, that's their home. They've been
Hmm.
there for 50 years. Don't tell me there's not sentimentality and things there that just, there's a
I
reason they're
don't,
there for 50
I
years.
don't, I don't know if Billy Crystal has kids. Like, I don't really know a lot about him.
Like, oh, he does. I believe he
Okay,
does.
so regard with that in mind, if he lived in that house for 50 years, he would have raised his kids there. They probably had family
Grandkids.
memories
Yeah,
in
of
there,
course.
right? Like, regardless of how much money you have, if
Right,
that's your home, it's still your home. And
right,
I get that people are saying, oh, well, they've got more than one house. Be
right,
that as it may, it's
right.
still someone's house. And just because
Correct.
they have more money than you will ever conceive of having doesn't
Yeah,
mean that losing the house isn't going to be some kind of traumatic event.
right. Like,
It's
it isn't inconsequential. Like, Paris Hilton
no,
lost her
exactly.
house, and everyone's like, "Oh, but it's Paris Hilton, no big fucking deal." And it's like, listen, she's still a human being. I'm sure the house meant something to her. There's a reason
Hmm.
you buy a certain house. And then everyone who's saying, "Oh, well, it's all the celebrities that this is, good for them, finally." Guess what? There are people in that area in Hollywood that aren't
It's
celebrities that
I
just
was gonna
chose
say
to live there.
it's not everyone in the area
Yeah.
versus celebrity. Someone has to work, and I'm not saying this to disparage anyone, but someone
No.
has to work at the Starbucks. Someone has to
Right.
work in the grocery stores, right?
Yeah.
Someone has to do these things to support that the others
Yeah.
that live there.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that any of those jobs are any less valuable
No,
if
no, 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 no. Right.
right? Like so as an anecdote, my I forgot to take my garbage out 2 weeks ago, the one before
Mhm.
last. So we get our compost picked up every 2 weeks, and then the regular waste picked up every 2 weeks. And I forgot to take the compost down.
Okay.
And the issue was it was already kind of full. I'm like, oh crap! I tried to take it down on a Wednesday. It should have gone out on a Tuesday.
Mhm.
No big deal. And then I realized that wait, it's going to be another 2 weeks. We've already got a month's worth, like, or 2 weeks of stuff in it. There's going to be a month's worth of stuff in
Right.
that, and it is not. There's not going to be enough room for it. And
So
it
it
then
overfilled. Yeah.
it over. I was able to cram it down, and there was some stuff that I was able to save that I didn't put out, like certain cardboards that we throw in the
Right.
green in the compost bin. So that ended up going in after it went out. So it's already pretty ready to be taken again, and it's not going for
Mhm.
another week. But it made me realize that if we didn't have people doing those jobs, like the garbage pickups, I don't know what I do because I couldn't, like, I don't have the energy to go back and do it. And that's why you
Yeah.
pay whatever you pay, like your whatever to do that.
I'm a
So,
firm believer as trades exist. Like, people, there's a stigma, and I am the least handy human being
mhm.
anyone will ever know. I am just not. I'm book
I
smart. I'm system smart. I can solve things, but as far as hands, dude, I'm all thumbs all the time. I'm talking with
yeah,
something like changing my tire. I can
I
do it now, but good lord, did it take a lot of tries. And
so
people,
here's the thing
oh,
with that.
mhm.
I fully admit that I cannot change a tire. I
Oh,
can
it's fucking awful.
the ironic I love the fact that there's two dudes talking about the fact we can't change a tire. And
You'll not hear this anywhere else, by the
no,
way, on the internet.
I put up two shelves the other day above the door. I'm like, I'm really happy the fact that I A put them up and B they haven't come down on me yet.
That's an
So
accomplishment.
I can't change a tire.
Yeah.
And when we got our last car, it didn't have a spare tire. And someone's like, well, what are you gonna do if you have to change? I'm like, do what I was gonna do if there was a tire
Call
there and call a
AAA.
fucking tow truck. Like I'm not
Exactly. And like, people bitch at me, like, everyone's like, why do that when you can do it yourself? I'm like, because that's why that guy has a job. So because
I
he's a tradesman. Like,
I
I don't.
like
Yeah.
someone we had a sink put in, we put a new sink in. And the
Hmm.
guy's like, oh, you could probably do this yourself. I'm like, I probably could. I said, but
Plumbing? Oh, hell no.
I said, I probably could, but the amount of effort, time, and whatever it would take me to buy the tools that I don't
Yep.
have,
Yep.
figure out what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and then do it and hope that I did it right, it would take me 5 times as long as you to do it in
Yep.
general. And then probably I'd have to do it again 3 times, or I can pay you to do it right and get it done
Yeah.
right the first time and not have to worry about it.
Exactly.
And he's like, yeah, fair enough. He said, And then he said, like, I'm sure there's stuff that you do without thinking that I couldn't do. I'm like, I'm sure there is. And I said, and that's why
Yeah,
I am always going to pay someone to do handiwork around my house because I'd rather it be
exactly.
done right.
They're
I
called
do
professionals for a
for a
reason.
exactly.
It drives me insane. There's this whole thing that like, oh, you're a man. You're supposed to go chop down a tree and then, grab tools. Like everyone always asks me, where's your toolkit? My what now? Your tools. Like you don't have like all your socket wrenches and this and that. I'm like, excuse me? Like I
Why?
have a hammer and I have a screwdriver. I have like maybe an electric screwdriver and maybe a drill, but that's it. And they're like, well,
I
where's this? And where's your 5/8? I'm like, dude, no, I don't.
what? I don't like. I don't. I have some of that stuff, but it's not because I bought it. It's because
Yeah,
it was in the house before I moved in.
right. Or I've been gifted that stuff, but like I don't
Exactly.
use it. I don't use it. And they're just like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. Like my buddy upstairs, good buddy Corey, he'll he had to take apart the fucking dryer because the ring around it, like the rubber ring,
Yep.
snapped. So he's like, "Oh, we're just gonna replace the dryer ring." And I was like, "Oh, when's the guy coming?" He's like, "Well, I called it. It was like $600 because that's a pain in the ass. It actually took Corey about an hour and a half." And he's like, "Oh," he's like, "But I'm watching this YouTube video right now." He's like, "You want to help?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "As long as you don't hold me responsible for what happens to the dryer." He's like, "Dude, I'm just gonna hand you the shit I take off, and you remember the order I took it off. That's it."
My
I
neighbor.
was so mind blown, Alex. He's just
Yep.
pausing the video and like, "Oh, okay. Here's this humongous dryer." By the end of it, it was nuts and bolts all over the floor in the back room. And I'm like, "How in the holy hell are you going to put this back together?" Like a Lego set. Boom, boom, boom,
Hmm.
boom, boom. And the thing spins like a top. I'm like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Yeah, dude." He's like, "That's why you have YouTube." He's like, "You
Yeah.
could have done this." I'm like, "I'm sure you I could
I,
not."
the thing is, I'm sure you could. Like,
Yeah.
there's two parts to that. Like, I'm sure I could do that if
Mhm.
I a knew what the problem was,
And
and
applied.
b had the tools and equipment to do it, and then also the confidence to do it.
Right. You're talking to a guy who jams puzzle pieces. If it's
Exactly.
that
Right.
bad, like I get bullshit. They're like, start with the corners, start with the corners. And I'll be like, there's 5,000 of these sons of bitches. And then I just start mashing them together. And they're like, all right, no more puzzles for you. Like, okay. It's just the way I am. I have different skill sets and attention spans and things like that. Like tediousness drives me up a wall. It's
Yeah.
just one of those things. And then believe me, I do things at my job in sequence that are tedious as you do in
Hmm.
cybersecurity. But it's not the same as doing like a physical task of tediousness
No,
over and over, like licking stamps to put on envelopes.
no,
Hell no.
I use a sponge for that.
I use that little dabber now.
Yep.
I had to do it once with my dad. We
Yep.
did 4,000. And I was like,
Oh,
why are we doing this? Do you hate me? He's like, well, we got to get these out. And I'm like, oh my God, what archaic society we live in. That
right.
why can't we just get a horse or something that just like we put it across its mouth? But that
Oh
kind of
shit.
stuff, tediousness drives me
Yeah.
insane. And I got no time for it.
No,
None.
so my neighbor has a photogenic, sorry, photo. I'm sure he has a photographic memory because he will
Eidetic
take
memory.
that. Yeah, eidetic memory. So he had an issue. We had an issue with our dryer, and I was like, it's 30 years old. We're probably about ready to buy a new one anyway, or 20 some
Yeah.
years old. We're ready to buy a new one anyway. Like, why? The washer's got. We need to buy a new washer dryer anyway.
Yeah.
So he comes over and he takes the washer apart. He's like, "Oh, this little tiny plastic thing broke. I just happened to have one in the basement, so I put a new one in for him. What do we owe you?" He's like, "Yeah, buy me coffee." I'm like, "What?" He's like,
That's not real.
he's like, "It took me 10 minutes to fix it. It wasn't a big deal." I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, and by the way, the thing on your dryer, the belt broke. I had a spare one, so I gave you can have it. What do we owe you for that?" He's like, "Just buy me a new belt next time I need it." I'm like, I was going to
It's
spend thirteen
unbelievable.
hundred dollars on a new dryer, and
Easily.
we just happened to be meant talking to him about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no worries." He's like, "Oh,
Now,
by the way, your lawnmower sounds like it's off. I think you need this, and this." Well, he was
that's
right. Like from
right.
sound, he was
That's
right.
crazy. Yeah, that's a skill. But
It.
no, I'll give you the example of the flip side of that. That's a human being, and that's what
Yep.
it should be like. It took me 10 minutes. You didn't clearly know what you were doing. You're a neighbor. I'm glad I could help. even if he charged you like a minimal thing, like, oh, just charge me,
I
$20 or
I
whatever, that's
was
fine.
I was gonna give him $100.
Right. So
Right, for
here's the flip side of that. A couple, I never told you this story, but it would only happen to me. So the whole house went on a cruise right before Christmas.
yeah.
I've been here for over a year living in this apartment. No issues whatsoever. But I told you that my toilet is raised up. I call it Thanos's throne because it's
Yeah.
up high and it's awesome. But the flip side of that is there's a sewage thing that goes underneath it.
Mhm.
And I remember when I moved in the first day, like a year and a half ago now in October, she was like, "Oh, and don't forget to do this if this ever happens." They all went on a cruise. They're all in the water. I'm watching the house. What happens? I go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden, I just start seeing black, brown ooze coming out from under my toilet, and I'm like, "Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me!" And it won't stop. The water is just going, 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 and I'm like, "Holy shit!" The one day that everyone's gone
Yep.
overseas, I can't reach them, and I'm like, "What do I do?" And all of a sudden, I finally just was like, "Okay, I can't just leave it like this." So I was running back and forth to Walmart and Dollar Tree buying like all their not the toilet paper, but paper towels in existence with
Yeah.
regular towels and just sopping it up. And I spent my whole day like sitting on my ottoman watching the toilet because it would stop and I'd be like, "Oh, thank God." And then all of a sudden it would start again like an hour and a half later. I'd get like a reprieve and I'd just keep doing it. And I was like, it's kind of like being on a battlefield and you don't want them to advance too far. So I was just kind of like holding off everything I could. Then finally I broke down and just called and I was like, "Hey, this happened." And they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that this happened. That sucks really bad." And they're like, "Just call the plumber." And I was like, "Who's the plumber? Like, I've never had to do this with, here. I'm not familiar." And they're like, "Oh, call this plumber." I was like, "All right." I'm like, "I don't want this to cost like $600 or something for, and it be something stupid." And
Yeah.
they're like, "Hey, it's got to be done. Like, it's our responsibility as the homeowner. You're renting from us, so like it's your apartment. We're your landlord. You can't have you have any type
Sewage
of
on
talk.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sewage and the dog, whatever." I was like, "Okay." So I call the plumber. He's the next town over, which is less than 15 minutes away. I mean, it's probably maybe 11 minutes. Easy, easy drive. So I call and they're like, the only instructions I was told by, my landlord, don't don't have them come on Sunday because they'll charge triple. They charge triple
Yeah.
time. So I said, fine. So the next day was Monday. So I was like, okay. And they couldn't come out till Tuesday. And I was like, that's fine. I'll stay home from work on Tuesday. Meanwhile, I go Sunday and Monday trying to deal with this, but it wasn't too bad on Monday. It seemed to subside. And then I was using the bathrooms upstairs when I had to use them because I was petrified to
You're
even turn a nozzle in like
yeah,
the
you're not gonna wanna
apartment.
touch that.
Yeah. So finally, Tuesday comes. This guy and his apprentice come in, real young kid, but also an older, gruff guy. And it's Christmas time, by the way. It's fucking
Okay.
Christmas time. So he comes and he's pissed off already. Now, I was told I was going to get a call. I'm working from home, so I'm on meetings and doing important stuff. I was told I was going to get a call. No call. He just shows up, bangs on the door. The dogs go nuts on all floors. I was like, great. I was in the middle of a meeting at that time. I wished I knew because I would have been able to prepare and like
You would have
not,
rescheduled the
yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
been an asshole. But, anyways, the guy comes down, he comes in. And he's like, "Oh, you got a problem with your toilet?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was told by a couple people by the way I described it that there's probably the seal around the bottom of the toilet is, rotted or whatnot, and you're gonna probably have to uproot it and just put a new rubber ring around. I understand that that's, kind of a procedure, and I've seen the prices on it. I was just like, I'm curious if that's what it is. And he just looked at it for 2 seconds. I mean, 2 seconds sideways glance, and he goes, "No, that ain't what it is." I was like, "It isn't?" He goes, "No." He's like, "Can I run your water for a sec?" I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, go ahead." And he ran it, and all of a sudden, sure as shit, the toilet started leaking everywhere. He goes, "Huh." He goes, "You have a sewage pump, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "You have a machine that pumps that has a switch?" And all of a sudden, it was like a bolt of lightning hit me. I was like, "Oh my fucking God." I'm like, I remembered the day one move in talk, and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, because when am I ever going to use that? And
Yeah.
of course, it was flipping a switch that was in the next room next to the cat box. What happened was either the cat or the boxes or whatever tripped the switch without me knowing. And I didn't think of it because I don't go to check and see if it's green every day because I just assume.
It's
Guy
yeah,
looks at me. Now, this guy did nothing, got out none of his toolbox, nothing. And you would think it would be the situation of your neighbor, right?
yeah,
That I was like, so how much do I owe you? He's like, well, he's like, we still had to come out here and this and that. He's like, we didn't do any manual labor. And his apprentice goes, do we even charge him for this? I mean, all we did was just flip a switch that he could have flipped. It's right there. He goes, hey, we still had to drive here. He goes, okay. And then I looked at the guy point blank and I was like, yeah, you drove a whole 11 minutes. I am so sorry. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, I'll waive the diagnostic fee. I'm like, diagnostic fee? I'm like, you looked at the toilet sideways. It just happened to be shitty water. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and I diagnosed it. I was like, that's like saying a doctor looks at someone and goes, yeah, you got cancer of, the brain. I said, that's crazy. And even the apprentice was like, yeah, that's a little much. And he goes, listen, kid. And then he just started muttering. He's like, I fucking hate Massachusetts. I was like, oh, I'm like, why? Because he's in Rhode Island, literally the next
yeah.
town over. I was like, oh, why? Any particular reason? No, I just fucking hate Massachusetts. I hate it here. I was like, I hate coming here. I was like, is most of your business in Massachusetts? He's like, unfortunately. I'm like, you might want to look at a new business. I said, but I definitely don't ask you to go into anything with public service because your demeanor is, and I was pissed at this point because he
Yeah,
was like, well, I'm thinking, all right, it's going to be about $70, right?
yeah.
$300. He was here
Jesus.
15. And I said, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And then at that point, I was already caught and it didn't go to me. It went to the house, but I ended up paying half of it out of my own heart because I just felt bad.
Yeah.
So fucking, because they're on a cruise and the first call they get is, oh my God, the toilet's
And
flooded,
the thing is like that if they were there, they could have come down. Oh, it's this,
Oh, they would have,
right?
and they
Like,
they even felt bad. They were like, "Holy shit, we didn't even think of that. It was so simple." They're like,
yeah.
we were like, it was so simple that we glossed over it that we didn't think it was an option. And I
It's
was like,
do you know?
"Yep,
So it's the same kind of thing in when you're dealing with a computer issue or anything like that. Like
right,
oh, did you reboot? Why would I reboot?
yeah, I did that yesterday. I
Because
got, oh my
sometimes there's
God,
something in how it happens and how the process
yeah,
starts that there's nothing you could have done any differently, but a
right,
reboot will actually fix it. And all I can
sure as shit,
explain is it's a case of, well, it's like when you go to put your pants on in the morning and you put both legs in the same, or both human legs in the same pant leg,
right,
and like, well, this is weird. Why won't this work? I guess I'll just take them off and put them on again. It's the same
right,
process. You just
it, yeah.
start it again.
That happened to me
And
yesterday. It's not even funny. I had one of my big systems, our programs
yeah,
that I use, all of a sudden this weird ass error came up. I looked away from the computer. I was on a conference call, so it was like toggling between screens, and I just happened to not pay attention for a few moments. And all of a sudden, I turn back to the screen that I need as bad as possible. It is this massive error, and I was like, "What the hell?" It's all code, and I'm like, "What is this?" So I'm trying to back out. I'm trying to, refresh. I'm trying to look at the options. I'm trying to do everything to get out. I'm like, "Oh, it must be a sequence thing. Maybe I leaned on the keyboard and something got toggled in."
I
No,
hate
fucking, I got so fed up. So I started sharing the error with everyone on my team. And they're like, holy crap, I've never seen that. So I'm starting to feel like the biggest idiot in the world. I'm like, oh, I am so screwed because none of my files are going to get done. I'm working from home. I can't go to IT because IT's in the building.
yep,
They're not, all of a sudden, I got so pissed and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to unplug the computer. I'm just going to reboot real quick. I reboot, the thing comes right back on. No problem. Right access, right back in. And I said, all that bitching because all I had to do was just reboot,
yep.
a hard reboot. I was
And
like, son of a bitch.
do you know how many people when I used to do tech support, how many people did you reboot? Well, no, that's not going to fix it.
Yeah,
I
I,
Okay,
I know.
buddy, I don't care if you think it's going to fix it or not. Your
Right.
job is incredibly important to the company,
Yep.
but you clearly don't know tech support. Like, this is what I do day in, day
Yeah.
out. I do this. And if I can go through and try and diagnose all of your issues, but
Yeah.
if you don't do step one, which might actually solve the issue,
Right.
then we might be here for 3 days straight,
Exactly.
right? And I'm not working for 72 hours straight.
No.
So it could very easily be fixed by that. Well, then I want to know what's going to how to stop it in the future. Save your work more often, and if it comes up again, reboot. That is the solution.
That is the solution, as stupid
It's
as
like
it sounds.
it's like
Yeah,
you can't when you're walking in the winter. Oh, I slipped on ice. How do I make sure I never do that again? You don't go out, so then you
right.
don't turn your computer. Like some
Yeah,
things happen, and you cannot stop it from
avoid them.
happening.
You can't
It
avoid it. Yeah.
it just is what it is. And I recall when we had a plumber out because our toilet was so badly blocked, and it was
Hmm.
just one of those things. Like I had plunged it, I had poured dish soap down in a bucket of water, and it didn't do anything. So then you had to
Yeah.
remove the water and out the window, basically like get the water out the window to try again. Like it wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
So we end up calling a plumber. And he comes with the toilet snake and he does his thing. He's like, there you go. I'm like, what? He said, it whatever it was. He's like, if your pipes are old, then it could easily just be something like that's caught on
Yeah.
something in the pipe. Like if these pipes have been here for a decade, for decades and decades,
Yeah.
then gunk will naturally build up in the bottom. And all it takes is for some enough toilet paper and whatever to catch on the
Right.
gunk and just block it completely. And there's
Just
nothing you can do.
yeah.
He said, I'm aware that if you had a snake, you could do it yourself. And I said, mate, I have been at this for an hour and you came in, you did it immediately. I said, it doesn't like in
Yeah.
that moment, it wasn't a case of, yes, you fixed it within 5 minutes, but you
Right.
had to have years of training to get to the point to know how to come in, boop,
Yeah.
done and gone. And
Exactly.
right, it's one of those things where it absolutely sucks that the guy charged you $300
Oh,
for the
what a
call out fee.
just a
But
dick.
at,
I,
at the end of the day, like he looked at the toilet for 30 seconds, like, oh no, the lining's fine. It's this over here.
it wasn't even 30 seconds. He didn't even go full into the bathroom. It was like a side eye out of the corner. And he goes, yeah, I
And
know what it is. And I said,
and that's
what?
that's the kind of thing that you can that's just experience, and you end
Right.
up paying the money for the experience and the
Of
talent
course.
of what they do. It's
Yeah.
just like $100 would have made so much more sense. But
Yeah, anything but that. Like, when he's like, I'll waive the diagnostic fee. I'm like, what did you diagnose?
it's like, so wait, hang on, you waived the diagnostic fee, there was no
Yeah.
labor, so it's a $300 call out
Yeah.
fee.
It was
That's
crazy.
so I we had the guy over to fit our new sink, and it was
Yeah.
less than that,
Yeah. No, no. It was
right?
fucking
Like
nuts.
when Buddy came to do our toilet, he's like, I feel bad that we've got to charge you $80 for this. I'm like, dude, I don't have another toilet in the house.
Right.
Like I actually had to take a break to go to a coffee shop because I needed to pee and like I didn't have anywhere to pee. So, I'm this is one of those things where like,
Yeah, of
yes,
course.
it's $80
Right.
and it sucks, but it's $80 and my issue is solved.
Right. Exactly. Like, dude, the last thing I said to him, I was so fucking pissed at that point because I was working. The dog was barking. I was just aggravated at that point. I almost slammed the door on him as he was leaving. He's like, anything else? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to tell doctors to quit their profession and start being plumbers. And then I said, see you later. And I just slammed
Yeah.
fuck you, because it's ridiculous. Like, $300 for 15 seconds of work, or 15 seconds of presence,
It's
not even work,
insane. Yeah.
presence.
Like
Like, if
that's the
I
kind
showed up at someone's house and flipped the switch and be like, oh, it's your switch, I'm so sorry, I'd
I
have been
would have
like,
been
listen, don't even worry about it. Like,
I'd have been
it
like,
happens
look,
all the
I've
time.
got to charge you my hourly rate for the time for the call out.
Yeah.
But beyond that, and the only reason I'd be doing that is purely because I had to drive here. So
Yeah.
whatever my hourly rate is we're
Yeah.
going to do it that, but we'll do it cash in hand if you have cash, so we don't have to.
Yeah. And it was Christmas too, you would think, but no.
So
Guy was
we
like, ah,
had,
whatever.
I don't know if I was telling you this. We were doing the deliveries for the Santa's Angels thing we did, and the fucking
Hmm.
U-Haul, the battery died.
Yes, you were telling me that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's crazy.
so the guy came to jumpstart us. Like we'd gone through AAA and whatever, but my wife and I aren't members of AAA,
Hmm.
ironically. But the Santa Claus that we had with us was, but him and the other person that was with us had actually gone like, oh, the battery, we're gonna go to the bathroom. Like, great, we'll go to the next house and meet you there. And the battery died in the parking lot of an apartment building. And so I called them, like, our battery's dead. Like, cool, AAA, we've both got memberships. We'll be back in a minute. Like, once
Yeah,
they've got their coffee in the bathroom, because it was a long morning.
right.
Didn't Buddy come? He lived, it was 2 minutes from when we phoned AAA got transferred to the local guy, and he's like, "Oh, I live around the corner. I'll be there in a minute." Literally
Hmm.
2 minutes, he was there.
Yeah.
And he comes, we pop the hood, he gets his machine out, starts it, and he's like, "All right, cool. Have a good Christmas." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Have a good Christmas," because he knew what we were doing. Like we weren't
Yeah.
out just driving around for the sake of it. And
No.
thankfully, we had boxes of chocolates in the truck, so we gave him one of those as a thank you. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's really kind. Thanks very much." And then that was it. And
Yeah.
so the next day or the day after, someone's like, "Hey, did you get the bill for that so that we can put it against our AAA membership so we don't have that so the
Right.
charity doesn't get charged for it basically?"
Yeah.
And we said he never gave us any paperwork. I said there, other than the phone call, there is no there is no evidence it was for us
He
that they
was
did it.
Santa.
Yeah,
He
and they were
just
like,
showed up.
"Oh, well, maybe it was the company that." I was like, I'm convinced that he didn't even log it as an issue. That he just did it as a
Yeah. Gesture.
right, like he just happened to come over. And it's not the first time that we've had someone with a tow truck that, like our other car, the battery died, and we were
Yep.
sat there trying to work out what to do. And a guy comes over, he's like, "Do you need a jump?" I'm like, "Oh, we would love one." I said, "What do we owe?" He's like, whatever. He's like, "I'm my work truck's there. No one knows I was here. Whatever. It
That's
doesn't matter."
crazy.
He's like, it's like I'm done for the day. No one knows anything. Like, and he literally walked from his front door over to a parking lot where we were, and then back in 5 minutes. Like he's like, I don't care. Like, I don't
Wow.
care. So
You
we're like,
got
well,
like guardian angels everywhere, dude.
it was crazy. Like now the thing is that he said, what I will tell you though is that you can buy this like it's like a mini car jumper. He said you can get
Yeah.
it from
Yeah.
Amazon. They're like $180. He said, so worth it. I'm like, yeah. We now have
Yeah.
a mini car jumper because it's so worth having one of those that you just like you can literally
Yeah.
put it in a backpack. It's not big at all. It's not heavy,
No.
and it just stays. It starts the car up whenever you need it to. Now I've got to make
Yeah.
sure it's still in good nick because
Hmm.
we haven't had to use it. So the last thing you want to do is have it and not.
No,
You
but
know
you
how
know what
we
I
said
just
we
realized? This is the well, just when I think we have probably space shotted to every topic in the universe possible in geekdom and everything we could possibly do on this show. And then today we come up with something that is so unlike anything we've ever done and probably anyone who's ever looked at a comic book site was expecting. But
yeah.
I'll be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed
I
this
I
episode,
will be
probably more than most of them.
honestly I same, and I was just thinking like, hey, we successfully didn't talk about Raw for the last hour,
Dude,
despite
really.
us touching. It's one of those shows where
Wow.
folks like I'm not editing any of this. You're going to hear the
No,
beginning, you're going to hear the end. There's going to be no breaks in it. There's very rarely any breaks in what we do other than if
right.
we're just both silent for a bit too
Yeah,
long
yeah.
or you get a phone call, whatever. There's very any edits we do is more a case of for flow,
Yep.
and there's very rarely any of those. There's going to be absolutely none of them in this one.
No,
I
this
don't.
thing was
The
nonstop.
notes of this show are we talk about YouTube and how incredibly unhandy we are because
Pretty much
I don't know what else we talked about, really.
Kevin Owens and just nice people. Like it's
Yeah.
the weirdest thing I've ever like none of this made this is more tangents than any tangents before,
It
but they
this is
all
this is
still
one of
kind
those
of went together.
well that's just it. This is one of those shows where I look up and I was, oh fuck, we've been recording for like 30 minutes and I
Yeah,
completely forgot. Like because
yeah,
we often talk before a show and after a show and
yeah, yeah.
whatever. Like all right, we'll record now for a bit.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that we started to record, I think, halfway through. Because we
That's
started
hilarious.
talking about plumbing and things, right? So
We but like, listen, anyone who's listened to this today, we promise we'll make it up to you. But maybe this helps you too. Maybe you're like, "Well, son of a bitch, I've gone through that stuff too."
yeah.
Nice to hear
Some
people talk about it.
yeah. Son of a bitch, these guys aren't trying to be hyper masculine and say, what do you mean you don't know how to change a tire? I don't. I
Dude,
don't know
I
how to
don't.
change a
The two
tire.
of us. So now I know when we go to like a Comic Con, we better have AAA because neither of us are going to be helpful at all if we break
Basically.
down.
Basically. Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, next week will be 299, and then we're gonna have a big 300. But man, anyone who's been along with the ride or jumped on at any point in time, we thoroughly thank you. I do have to wrap, but when you always think you've got it figured, something goes left. And today, it was pipes, it was batteries, unbelievable. But
Everything.
it was a good episode. I mean,
I agree.
anyone who listens is going to be like, "What?"
You consider this if this is your first episode of Those Two
Oh
Geeks,
God,
thank you for staying with us for this long. We promise you this is not.
never.
Do you know what? I wasn't going to say this isn't normal for us. We do tangents. We just very rarely do tangents about plumbing.
They're tangents that are related to at least uh, IPs and fandom and geekdom and something that ties back.
Yeah.
None of this tied back. None of this
No,
tied
none
back.
of it. Well,
But hey, that's us.
there we go.
Right on cue. The dog's banging the dish around. Right on cue. Because he literally looked up at me a few seconds ago. He's been sick for the past 2 days. He looked up at me with this look like, you've been talking nonsense for an hour while I've been sitting
I'm
here.
hungry. I was just about to end the recording and then he banged that and then we started laughing and I'm leaving that in.
Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.